Hey, quick question for you. How honest are you when nobody's watching? There's always a story that I've loved about Steve Jobs, about when he was building the Apple. People question why it mattered so much that the inside of the Mac was just as pretty as the outside. And Steve, allegedly, was that he was so concerned with integrity, doing things well, doing things fully, doing things perfectly, that it wasn't even about the customer knowing, it was about him knowing that that was done perfectly and done well. Fast forward all those years later, when you look at Apple's material design and their form factors and the things that they're able to do, it's possible to say that that level of obsession and care and integrity about doing things well, doing things right, meant that they were able to push the boundaries on technology and materials to be able to create the kinds of devices we have today. And so this word integrity was really, really interesting for me growing up, because a lot of people have very different definitions of the word integrity. They think it's about being a good person or being an honest person, which I think, it sort of aligns up with it. But the definition that I really came to like about integrity was that it's whole and complete. It doesn't have morality attached to it. It doesn't have like good, bad, right, wrong. It just means, does it work as intended? Does it function? And does it do it to its fullest potential? Or is there some sort of compromise? Is there some sort of breakdown? Is there some sort of weakness? So if you think about designing a car to have integrity means everything works in it. It doesn't mean the back windows don't work and it's got a flat tire and it's out of gas. If that's the case, then the car lacks integrity. And again, that's not to say that it's a bad car or the person who owns the car is a bad person. It's just literally a mechanical view of saying, is it whole and complete or is it not? So when we look at the things about being whole and complete, well, let's just say we give our word to something and we say, I'm going to do this week. I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose some weight this year and I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to be early to my meetings, or I'm going to meet that deadline. And then along the way, you start making choices that potentially erode your ability to do that. So much so that by the end of the road, you're actually late to the meeting, you don't lose any weight, you don't basically keep your word. And then you look for reasons to justify and explain why you didn't keep your word. At some point, you might be able to attribute, well, this happened or that happened, and people may agree with you, they may appease you, they may get off your back. I mean, on certain things about your personal life, they might not even really push you at all because it doesn't really concern them that you've put on a few extra kilos. It doesn't really change their life, but it will certainly change yours. It's this death by a million paper cuts. You don't just miss this deadline because of necessarily one key milestone event. It's a series of small steps along the way that when you had the opportunity to be whole and complete, you didn't. You chose to compromise. And it's this idea that you start with this 100% and then you go to 99 and then you do 98, and 98 is close enough to 100. The 97, no one's really noticed. 96, it's still good. 95, still better than most people. 94, 93, 92. And the next thing you know, you're at 90. And 90 now becomes your new 100. This new 100 becomes this, well, if we get to that, that's near enough, it's good enough, even though you may know that may not actually be what's required. There's a great Alex Hormozi quote about this. Are you doing your best, or are you doing what's required? And I know it upsets a lot of people because they introduce this sense of guilt and shame, and I am doing my best. But if you are able to remove that emotional morality from it, no one's saying that you're a good or bad person other than maybe yourself. The intent of that conversation is saying, are you actually able to do what's required? Did you complete it? Is it whole and complete? Yes or no? It's a very binary answer. When we practice effectively cheating, we practice cutting corners, we practice not being whole and complete when nobody's watching, well, that can also greatly attribute to why sometimes we fall short of the goals that we want to have. There's a Warren Buffett quote, that when the tide goes out, you discover who's been swimming naked. And the idea of that is that when you are put under pressure, when you're put under lights, your practice is now on display. So if you say that you've been practicing, if you say that you've been doing training, if you say you've been eating right, you say you've been lifting the weights, you say you've been saving the money, and then suddenly now you find yourself in a situation where you're kind of having to prove it. You're kind of under pressure, you're under lights. Well, now you and everyone's about to see the shots you haven't been practicing, the money you haven't saved, the body you haven't been working towards. You can imagine that as people recognize that event coming, that gets very, very scary because they're aware that they're about to be found out. We become aware they're about to be found out. And then that's when we get clever and tricky to try to do things to avoid being found out. And that's when people get a little bit silly, I think. So if you think about how this sort of comes to be, it's saying, well, how do you start by giving your word to something and then every day doing your absolute best to do what's required to meet the 100%, to be whole and complete, so that if nobody was watching, you know that it's done. You know that it's done well. You know that you kept your word to it. And it doesn't matter about what other people think, because you know that if and when that day comes where the tide goes out and you're on the court under lights, you won't have anything to worry about. You will now be a demonstration to everybody else that you keep your word to yourself and you don't self-deceive, especially when nobody's watching? That's a bit of a chewy question. I'll leave that one with you.